For centuries, Earth had been a quiet place, free from any major threats from the stars. The cities grew, the skies filled with the hum of modern life, and humanity slowly expanded across the stars. Earth had become just another peaceful world in the vast galaxy. But everything changed on a calm, ordinary morning when the sky was no longer empty. At first, no one noticed. It was just another peaceful day, a quiet morning in a world where humans had learned to trust their technology. But then, a blip appeared on the radar systems of Earth's most advanced defense satellites. A strange anomaly, a massive object had entered the solar system, moving at a speed too slow for it to be an asteroid. The signal was weak, too faint for immediate identification. The authorities thought it might be a glitch at first, a misread in the system. But as the hours passed, the blip grew stronger. And then, something extraordinary happened. The object stopped. It hovered at the very edge of the solar system, silent, still. Earth's governments scrambled to analyze the data, but every attempt to get a clearer picture failed. The mysterious presence seemed to be watching Earth, unmoving and patient. It wasn't until a series of brilliant high-level scientists, led by the brilliant Dr. Eva Ward, began studying the signal that they made a chilling discovery. "This isn't some random object," Dr. Ward said, her voice shaking. "This is a ship, and it's too advanced for anything we've ever seen." The realization struck like a thunderclap. The entire world was suddenly on edge. The object, or whatever it was clearly not from Earth. There was no sign of any alien civilization in the galaxy capable of constructing such a thing, at least not from the known records humanity had. The sheer size of it, and the technology used, seemed almost mythical. By the next day, the news had spread like wildfire. The first signs of panic started to build, not only among the leaders of Earth, but among the people. Governments began making plans. They weren't sure who or what had arrived, but they knew it was something unlike anything they had encountered. Some began to fear that the mysterious ship might be the vanguard of an invasion, a force so far beyond human capability that there was no hope of defense. But then, something even stranger happened. Without warning, the strange object sent a signal, one that was neither a message nor a threat, but a pulse. It was a warning, but it also seemed like a call, an invitation. The pulse itself carried an energy signature that seemed almost alive, and it traveled directly to every satellite, every receiver on Earth, as though it was reaching into the hearts of humanity. It was clear that whoever or whatever was out there was trying to communicate, but the words were lost on human ears. As the days turned into weeks, the situation only grew more mysterious. A cold silence lingered in the air. Earth's leaders, now joined by the scientific community, worked together in a frenzy to decode the signal. Yet every attempt was met with failure. Dr. Ward, however, had an idea. She believed the signal was an ancient form of communication, one that used patterns more complex than anything they had encountered. She was convinced that if they could understand it, they could contact the mysterious presence. But the more she looked into the data, the more she began to realize that this wasn't a message from any ordinary civilization. This object, this ship, it was connected to something much older. Something that could change everything humanity thought it knew about its origins. One evening, as she sifted through ancient Earth records in an attempt to find a connection, Dr. Ward stumbled upon a forgotten legend. It was an old myth, buried in ancient texts and barely mentioned in human history books. A story about beings who once lived on Earth long before humanity, a race so advanced that they were said to have been the creators of many of the ancient structures found on Earth. These beings, according to the story, had disappeared without a trace. Their departure was a mystery that had haunted historians for centuries. Could this be related to the strange object now hovering in space? Could the legends be true? Dr. Ward could hardly believe what she was reading. If these beings had once inhabited Earth, then the arrival of this ship wasn't a random event. It was a return. The beings had come back. But why now, after so many years? And why hadn't they made contact sooner? Was this a warning, or something far more complex? These were the questions that kept Dr. Ward awake at night. The more she thought about it, the more she began to feel a sense of urgency. The fate of Earth might depend on how they responded to this ancient, long-lost civilization. Then, just as Dr. Ward was beginning to feel the weight of the mystery press down on her, the silence was broken. Another signal, this time much clearer, filled the airwaves. It was no longer a faint pulse, but a clear, undeniable message. However, it was not in any human language. The ship's presence was speaking, but it spoke in symbols, a pattern that seemed to twist and shimmer as it reached Earth. For the first time, Earth's leaders and scientists agreed this was not an alien threat. It was something far more ancient, far more profound. The ship wasn't here to destroy, but to make contact with humanity's distant past. The entire world held its breath. What would happen next? Would humanity be able to bridge the vast gap of time and understand the message? And if so, what would they learn about the beings that once called Earth home? The answers seemed just beyond reach, like a shadow hiding just out of sight. The silent return had only just begun, and the mystery that surrounded it would soon unravel in ways humanity could never have imagined. Every passing moment raised more questions, and every moment spent waiting only deepened the sense of suspense. The future of Earth was no longer in the hands of those who ruled it now, but in the hands of those who had left it behind so long ago. Dr. Eva Ward sat in her dimly lit lab, her eyes scanning through ancient texts and old records. The faint glow of the screen illuminated her face, revealing a mix of excitement and fear. She had spent weeks trying to decipher the strange signals from the alien ship hovering just beyond Earth's orbit. But it wasn't just the signals that had her attention now. It was the history. They seemed to point toward a history that humanity had long forgotten. The more she dug into the ancient records, the more she uncovered a truth that seemed impossible to believe. Earth, the planet that humanity now called home, had once been a cradle for a civilization so advanced that it made modern humans seem like children in comparison. The beings who had once walked this planet were not like humans at all, but were deeply connected to Earth in ways that seemed almost mystical. These beings had left Earth long before humans even appeared, abandoning the world for reasons that no one could explain. But now, after 30,000 years, they had returned. Dr. Ward's fingers hovered over the keyboard as she scanned through the records again. The texts she had uncovered were ancient, written in a language no one had understood for thousands of years. But as she pieced together the symbols, she began to see a pattern, a message hidden within the words. The beings who had once lived on Earth had not just abandoned the planet, they had left a warning. A warning about the future of Earth and the dangers that would come if humanity didn't understand its true origins. She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Could it be true? Could the beings that had come back be the same ones who had once shaped humanity's history? The evidence was overwhelming, yet unbelievable. It seemed impossible to accept, yet everything pointed in the same direction. Earth had not always been home to humans. Before humanity had ever taken its first steps, this planet had been the home of another race, one that had left behind a legacy that was only now starting to unravel. Eva knew she had to dig deeper. The truth, she realized, was not just hidden in old records and forgotten myths. It was buried in the very foundation of Earth itself. The ancient beings had left behind not only stories, but also structures, ruins that scattered across the planet like scattered pieces of a broken puzzle. These structures were unlike anything humans had ever built. Massive, towering structures made of materials that no one could identify, glowing with a strange energy that still hummed through the earth. They were the remnants of a past that had been lost to time. As she began to investigate these ruins, Dr. Ward discovered something that would change everything. One by one, she and her team uncovered hidden chambers beneath the ancient structures. These chambers contained artifacts, strange devices, and tools that defied all logic. They were unlike anything humans had ever seen, each one a testament to the incredible intelligence of the beings who had once called Earth their home. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that these beings were not just advanced, they were unlike anything humanity could comprehend. The artifacts they had left behind seemed to be alive, reacting to Dr. Ward's touch in ways that were impossible to explain. One artifact, in particular, stood out to her. It was a small, smooth stone, no larger than a human hand, but it pulsed with an energy that sent shivers down her spine. When she held it, images flooded her mind, images of a time long past, when Earth was not the planet it was today. She saw massive cities, towering spires that reached into the sky, and beings who moved with such grace and intelligence that they seemed more like spirits than flesh and blood. These beings had not just lived on Earth, they had shaped it. They had created the land, the seas, and even the sky itself. Earth was not just their home, it was their creation. And now, with the arrival of the fleet, they had returned to reclaim it. Eva's mind raced as she pieced together the evidence. The beings had left Earth not because they were defeated or destroyed, but because they had been forced to leave. An ancient enemy, one that had never been fully understood, had driven them away. This enemy had come from beyond the stars, and its purpose was to destroy everything in its path. It was a force so powerful that even the ancient race could not stand against it. They had been forced to retreat, leaving behind Earth and everything they had built. But they had not forgotten. Now, after 30,000 years, the enemy had returned. And this time, the beings who had once ruled Earth had come back not to reclaim their lost power, but to protect the planet from the danger that was coming. Eva sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. She realized that the mystery was far bigger than she had ever imagined. The beings who had come back were not here for conquest, they were here to warn humanity. The planet was in danger. The same enemy that had driven them away so many years ago was closing in on Earth once again. And if humanity didn't act quickly, they would be doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. The truth was clear now. Earth had been abandoned for a reason, and it was up to humanity to understand the past and prepare for the future before it was too late. Dr. Ward's discovery spread quickly. The news of the ancient race's return and the looming threat that had followed them was broadcast across the globe. Governments scrambled to prepare, but no one was sure how to fight an enemy as powerful as the one that had driven the ancient beings away. Earth's military forces were formidable, but they were no match for an enemy that had already defeated the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was hope. Dr. Ward and her team worked tirelessly to uncover more secrets hidden within the ancient artifacts. Each discovery brought new answers, and with each answer came new questions. What had happened to the ancient beings after they left Earth? Where had they gone, and why had they waited so long to return? And most importantly, how could humanity survive when the same enemy that had destroyed the ancient civilization was coming for them? As the days passed, the sense of urgency grew. The ancient race had come back to Earth for a reason, to protect it. But whether humanity could learn from the mistakes of the past and rise to the challenge remained to be seen. The truth about Earth's past had been revealed, but the future was still uncertain. Time was running out, and the fate of the planet now rested in the hands of those who were willing to confront the terrifying truths of their own origins. This part reveals more about the ancient race's connection to Earth, and the looming danger, keeping the suspense alive while gradually unveiling the mystery. Let me know if you'd like to. As the days passed, the truth about Earth's ancient past spread across the globe. Dr. Eva Ward's discoveries had shaken the foundations of what humanity believed to be true about its origins. The realization that Earth had once been home to a race far more advanced than humanity, a race that had left for reasons that remained a mystery, had sent shockwaves through governments, military forces, and the general public. The alien fleet, silent and enormous, loomed in the sky, waiting for something, but no one knew what. And with the arrival of this long-forgotten race, one question hung heavily in the air. What did humanity do now? In response to the threat, Earth's leaders came together in an emergency summit. The United Nations called for a meeting with representatives from all nations, but even with the combined might of every world power, there was a sense of helplessness. The knowledge of the ancient race's return had sparked fear in everyone, but the looming enemy, one far older and more powerful than anything humanity had faced before, seemed like an unstoppable force. Military leaders discussed their plans to counteract the threat, but deep down, they knew that their weapons, no matter how advanced, might not be enough. General Marcus Thorne stood before the world's leaders, his face grim. As one of the leading military commanders, he had seen his share of conflict, but this was different. The beings who had returned were not just visitors from another star system, they were ancient. They had shaped Earth itself. And now, after so many years, they had come back not as conquerors, but as protectors. Their message was clear. Humanity was not ready for the enemy that would soon arrive. "I don't need to tell you," General Thorne began, his voice steady, but filled with an undercurrent of concern, "that we are not prepared for what's coming. Our weapons are ineffective against an enemy with the power to defeat an ancient race. We've been warned, but the question is, what do we do now?" The silence in the room was deafening. Earth's leaders had no answers. In the face of this alien return, their years of military strength, technology, and political influence seemed like nothing. They could no longer rely on the systems that had kept them safe. The world was on the edge of a crisis unlike anything they had imagined. But then, a voice spoke from the back of the room. It was Dr. Eva Ward, the woman who had uncovered the truth about Earth's past. She had been invited to the summit to provide insight into the ancient race and their possible connection to humanity's future. Her face, though weary from sleepless nights, was determined. She had learned something in her research, something that could change everything. "We've been focusing on the wrong problem," Dr. Ward said, her voice cutting through the silence. "The enemy that is coming is powerful, yes, but the ancient race that has returned is not here to fight us. They are here to protect us." Her words took a moment to sink in. The leaders exchanged glances, unsure of what she was implying. "Protect us?" General Thorne questioned, narrowing his eyes. "How can they protect us if we've never even met them before? We don't understand them." Dr. Ward nodded. "That's the point. We don't understand them, but they understand us. They understand Earth. They understand the enemy better than we ever could. And we need to trust them." The room was filled with murmurs of disbelief. Trust aliens, especially ones that had abandoned Earth 30,000 years ago? The idea seemed absurd to many. But Dr. Ward wasn't done. "The truth about Earth's past is not just about the beings who once lived here," she continued. "It's about how humanity fits into this larger puzzle. Not just any planet. It's the center of something much bigger, a conflict between ancient races that have been waging war across the galaxy for eons. The enemy that is coming is not just an invading force, it's an extinction-level threat. The ancient race that has returned, they left because they were outmatched. They're here now because they believe humanity has the potential to stop this enemy. We are the key." General Thorne looked at her with skepticism. "You're asking us to believe that humanity, us, the same species that only a few centuries ago were fighting wars among ourselves, can save the planet from a force we don't even understand?" "I know it's hard to accept," Dr. Ward replied, her voice softer but no less determined. "But this is the truth. Humanity was never meant to be just a passive observer. We were meant to rise. The ancient race didn't abandon us. They set the stage for us to be ready. The question is, are we ready to accept that responsibility?" The room fell into silence again, as everyone processed her words. The weight of what Dr. Ward was saying hit each leader differently. Some were afraid of the unknown, others were filled with hope. The answer wasn't easy, and there was no clear path forward. Yet, as the minutes ticked by, something began to shift in the atmosphere. It was President Elena Reyes, the leader of the United States, who finally spoke. "If what Dr. Ward is saying is true, then we don't have a choice. We must act. We must find a way to communicate with the ancient race. If they can help us, we need to work together." The decision was made. Earth would not stand idle in the face of this threat. Humanity would put its trust in the ancient race, and in turn, they would do everything in their power to learn from them and defend the planet. The first steps were taken quickly. Representatives were sent to meet with the alien leaders who had returned, and humanity's greatest minds were brought together to form a strategy. But as the summit adjourned and the leaders began to prepare for the next phase, an unsettling truth lingered in the back of everyone's mind. The ancient race had returned, but why had they waited so long? Why hadn't they come back sooner, when humanity might have been able to use their guidance earlier? And most importantly, how much of the ancient race's power remained after 30,000 years of dormancy? The answers to these questions were not yet clear, but one thing was certain: humanity's fate now rested on a delicate balance. They had no choice but to trust in the ancient race and fight the coming enemy, but the road ahead was uncertain, and the future of Earth hung in the balance. As the night fell, the people of Earth looked up at the sky, their gazes drawn to the dark silhouette of the alien fleet. It was a moment of both fear and hope, a reminder that the greatest challenge humanity had ever faced was now just beginning. And the response had been set in motion. There would be no turning back. The world had never been so tense. The return of the ancient race had sent humanity into a frenzy of fear and hope. For years, the people of Earth had lived in relative peace, believing they had risen above their past struggles. But the sudden arrival of beings from a forgotten age, far more advanced than anything they could imagine, had shattered this illusion. No one knew what the ancient race wanted, but one thing was clear: their return was not a peaceful gesture. Earth was on the brink of something far greater than anyone had anticipated. It had been 3 weeks since the first communication from the alien fleet. Every attempt to understand their message had ended in failure. The humans who had managed to make contact with the ancient race, including Dr. Eva Ward, had learned that their technology was beyond comprehension. They had also learned that the fleet was not there to offer assistance. The ancient race had returned to witness the reckoning. Humanity, though cautious, could not afford to ignore the enormity of the situation. For every person who hoped the aliens would be their saviors, there were just as many who feared they had come to claim the Earth for themselves. Governments scrambled to strengthen their defenses, but deep down, they knew their technology could not match the alien fleet. The question that gnawed at everyone was simple: what would the ancient race do when the reckoning finally came? The skies were quiet now. The alien ships remained suspended above the planet, a looming presence that filled the atmosphere with dread. Despite their stillness, there was an unmistakable sense of urgency in the air. People everywhere could feel it. The quiet before the storm. The unknown. Dr. Eva Ward, once a brilliant scientist, now found herself at the center of this chaos. The pressure on her was immense. After all, she had been the one to uncover the hidden history of Earth, revealing the existence of an ancient race that had once ruled this world. Yet, despite all the answers she had provided, she still did not know what would happen next. The reckoning had arrived, but she couldn't see the end of it. All she had was her faith in the unknown. The global summit had been convened in the hopes of gaining a unified strategy. The room was filled with the world's leaders, military generals, and scientific minds, each eager to discuss their options. General Marcus Thorne stood at the front, his arms crossed, a look of grave concern on his face. "We have done everything we can," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "Our forces are in position. Our weapons are ready. But let's not kid ourselves, we're facing something far beyond anything we've encountered. If the ancient race has returned, it's because something terrible is coming. And it's coming for us." The silence that followed his words hung like a cloud over the room. The tension was palpable. Dr. Ward knew that the general spoke the truth. No matter how advanced their technology was, no matter how much power they had gathered, humanity had no experience dealing with an enemy like this. They had no plan. The ancient race was far more powerful, and they knew it. "We need to communicate with them," Dr. Ward spoke up, her voice firm. "We cannot let fear guide us. We have to find a way to understand their purpose. If we can't, we risk everything." Her words were met with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. General Thorne glanced at her, his eyes searching for any hint of certainty. "And how do you suggest we do that, Dr. Ward? They've made it clear they don't intend to speak with us." "What's left?" Eva swallowed, the weight of the world on her shoulders. She didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear: if they didn't find a way to connect with the ancient race, Earth would face its reckoning alone. And they could not afford that. As the summit continued, a new message was received from the alien fleet. It was brief, direct, and sent to every communication channel across the globe. The words were few but chilling. "Prepare for judgment." The message echoed through every screen, every speaker. The world stood still. People watched in fear as the meaning of the words began to sink in. Judgment. The reckoning had begun. Across the globe, nations braced themselves. The military took up positions, ready to defend Earth, but it was clear they were not prepared for what was coming. Humanity had always been quick to fight back, to resist, but they had no idea who or what they were truly up against. Dr. Ward couldn't shake the feeling that the ancient race had returned to fulfill a purpose far beyond any battle. This wasn't about victory or defeat. It was about something deeper, something that had been set in motion long before any of them had been born. The next day, the reckoning began. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a display of power. The alien ships, for the first time since their arrival, activated their full array of technology. The sky above every city turned dark as the ships emitted a pulse of energy that reached every corner of Earth. The world trembled under the weight of their presence. The power they commanded was beyond anything humanity had ever seen. It was a reminder that the reckoning wasn't just about fighting, it was about understanding where Earth truly stood in the grand order of the universe. But even as the world held its breath, a strange thing began to happen. As the pulse of energy continued, humanity did not fall to their knees in despair. Instead, something within the people began to stir. The same determination that had driven them to explore the stars, to build cities from nothing, began to ignite again. They weren't just going to sit back and wait for judgment. They were going to rise up. They were going to face whatever came with the courage they had always possessed. Dr. Ward stood on the rooftop of a building in New York City, staring up at the alien ships above. The pulse of energy had passed, and for a brief moment, everything seemed still. The people around her looked to the sky, unsure of what to expect. But then, in a single moment, a voice broke through the silence. It was not spoken aloud, but felt in the hearts and minds of everyone. This is the reckoning. You will decide your fate. The message echoed across every human being. It was not a command, but a challenge. The reckoning had not come to destroy them. It had come to test them. The ancient race was waiting, watching, to see if humanity had the strength to rise, to fight, and to prove their worth. The decision was now in their hands. As the people of Earth prepared for whatever would come next, they understood that the reckoning was not the end, it was the beginning. The beginning of a new era, and it would be one that defined them forever. The sky had never seemed so ominous. Earth was on the edge, teetering between the brink of something extraordinary and the threat of total annihilation. The return of the ancient alien race, a forgotten power that had once ruled the planet, had shocked the world to its core. Their presence, hanging above every major city, felt like a heavy weight on the hearts of all humanity. No one knew why they had returned, but their ships, massive and silent, loomed in the heavens, casting shadows over everything. Were they here to reclaim what was once theirs, or were they simply here to destroy? Dr. Samuel Klein stood at the window of his lab, his hands pressed against the cold glass as he watched the sky. He had studied the ancient race for years, long before their return, and he knew one thing: this moment had been coming. It had been written in the stars, in the forgotten archives buried deep beneath the Earth's surface. Yet, even with all his knowledge, he had no idea what their next move would be. The global response had been swift but disjointed. Governments had called emergency meetings, military forces had been put on high alert, and nations scrambled to form a unified defense. But Dr. Klein, a scientist who had spent decades researching the origins of these beings, knew that the military strength was useless. The technology of the ancient race was far beyond anything humanity could comprehend. They had come not just with advanced weapons, but with knowledge that could reshape the very fabric of reality itself. Humanity's leaders had been debating their next move for days. Some called for an immediate military strike, hoping to take down the alien ships before they could do any more damage. Others argued for diplomacy, suggesting that Earth's only hope lay in communicating with the invaders. The division was clear. Some believed the ancient race sought to reclaim their former dominion over Earth, while others feared they had returned to wipe out the human race completely. In the midst of all this confusion, one thing became increasingly clear: Earth's future hung in the balance. In the heart of Washington, D.C. She stared at the holographic display in front of her, showing the vast fleet of ships hovering above the planet. The tension in the room was palpable. No one spoke, each person lost in their own thoughts, trying to make sense of the impossible situation. We need a plan, President Cross finally spoke, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of fear behind her words. If we don't act soon, we may never get another chance. General David Sterling, the head of Earth's military, was the first to speak up. We can't just sit around and wait for them to make the first move. Our forces are in place, and we should strike now. We can't let them take control of the planet. Earth belongs to us. But do we even know what they want? Dr. Klein interjected. His voice was calm but filled with urgency. We've had no communication, no clear indication of their intentions. If we attack, we could trigger something far worse than we can imagine. These beings are not like anything we've ever faced before. They are not just invaders. They are the ones who once ruled this world. The room fell silent once more as everyone absorbed Dr. Klein's words. The weight of history seemed to press down on them. The ancient race had once been Earth's rulers, only to vanish thousands of years ago, leaving behind cryptic messages and broken ruins. No one had known why they disappeared or where they had gone, but now they had returned. But for what purpose? We need to communicate with them, Dr. Klein continued, his voice filled with a quiet desperation. We need to understand their motives. If they've come to reclaim what was once theirs, we have to know that before we make any decisions. There's still a chance to prevent a war. President Cross nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. And if they want to destroy us? We fight back, General Sterling said without hesitation. But we don't make that decision based on fear. We need answers before we decide if we stand a chance. The debate raged on, but no solution seemed clear. Days turned into weeks, and still, the ships remained in the sky, silent and unmoving. People on the streets whispered in fear, unsure of what would come next. Governments sent messages to the alien ships, but there was no reply. The uncertainty of it all hung in the air like a storm ready to break. Then, one fateful evening, everything changed. The ship silent until now began to move. At first, it was barely noticeable, a shift in position. But soon, the entire fleet was descending, inching closer to the Earth's surface. Panic spread like wildfire as cities prepared for the worst. Military forces were mobilized, but Dr. Klein knew it was too late. A strike would only escalate the situation. The aliens were already moving toward the cities, as if drawn by some unseen force. When they reached the ground, it wasn't destruction that followed. It was something else, something unexpected. The ships landed in the center of major cities across the world, their enormous forms casting long shadows over the streets. The silence was deafening. No weapons, no attacks, just an eerie stillness. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then, without warning, the alien ships opened. From the depths of the enormous crafts, figures emerged tall, elegant beings with eyes that glowed like stars. They were humanoid but far more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. The crowd stood in awe as the beings stepped down, their movements graceful and deliberate. They weren't here to destroy Earth. They weren't here to claim it either. They were here for something else. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the air. We have come.